Le Nissan Kick-Play 2025 a beaucoup de plus. Apple CarPlay intégré pour jouer vos tunes préférées, des fonctions avancées de sécurité, un rendement énergétique remarquable, puis même la petite odeur de char neuf qu'on aime tant. Tout ça en plus pour moins. Le Nissan Kicks Play 2025 est le véhicule neuf le plus abordable au Québec. Achetez-le à partir de seulement 22 774 $, incluant un rabais à l'achat comptant de 2 600 $. Profitez de cette offre avantageuse chez votre concessionnaire dès maintenant. Jusqu'au 2 mars, des conditions s'appliquent. Détails chez Nissan.
So Apple unveiled its newest iPhones, iPhone 14, iPhone 14 Pro. They announced a new Apple watches. They announced new headphones. So they're good at every year updating their products. But there are other questions about this company. And if Apple, in and of itself, has lost a bit of its tech luster, if the new and great ideas can still come from this company. Let's go to Mitch Joel, tech advisor, investor, and author of CTRL ALT Delete. Mitch, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Elias. How are you?
I'm good. I'm conflicted on this one because there are so many examples of Apple dominating and Apple doing things that no one else is doing. I think of the chips that they're putting in their products, and you're like, wow, they are leaps and bounds ahead of competitors. But then I look at the simple fact that, okay, what has the company done? What have you done for me lately? And it just seems like they're plodding along. Okay, this is the iPhone 14 this year. Next year you'll have the iPhone 15, and so on and so forth. What's your take on Apple in 2022?
It's an interesting question. One is that it's hard to not look at the technology landscape and see that there are emerging innovations that haven't yet made it to be consumerable yet. We could look at things like augmented reality, virtual reality, the metaverse, even smart audio, if you think about things like your Echoes and those devices. And they haven't really hit this critical mass, but they're there on the periphery. And Apple tends to be a company that waits to see more consumer dominance before truly implementing and pushing it. So I think the stuff that will make us go, wow, is actually here. We just don't have enough people using it and a price point that makes it consumable at that. So that's you may be forgiven a little bit, Apple. But I would say that if you look at things like you were talking earlier about the chips, the speed, the size, what I would call the durability of this technology, they really are moving leaps and bounds from the software and the internal technology that is astounding. So if you look at things like the new Apple Watch, and you see what you can do with, especially the higher end one, the rugged one, I can't remember the exact name they gave it, but the ability to have all of this technology in there and how it interconnects more effectively with their phones. And then seeing these new iPhone 14s going for the same price as the phones last year in a world where inflation, supply chain, especially microchips, has taken a huge hit, I'm a little bit more forgiving because overall, I feel like what we're seeing is a more durable product. You buy it, it's strong, it's fast, it's connected to your ecosystem, and it does what it says it does, and maybe even a little bit more. It feels like they're hitting this interesting groove on that part.
So you know what I love about having you on the show, Mitch? I agree with you on some things. I disagree with you on some things, right? So one thing you're pointing out very correctly, what they did yesterday with no price increases is astounding considering all of the inflation stuff. Like everyone was expecting $100 increases across the board. Didn't happen. They kept the prices the same. You are bang on. But here's an example, Mitch, of, you said Apple waits until there's been, a market penetration before they get involved here. Well, then what's their excuse for the electric car? What's their excuse that they have seemingly started this project 18 million times, and then every 6 months you hear executives out at Apple, person leading Apple car is gone. And look at what's happened with Tesla, right? Which has now all the mind share, and it almost seems like a stranglehold position now with what they've done with self-driving and what they've done with supercharging. In the last 10 years, did Apple fall asleep at the switch on certain things like EVs?
I'm not sure. I'm not necessarily sure that needs to be part of their ecosystem to be effective. And the reason I say this is because if you look at the tenure of Tim Cook, Apple's CEO, who's now been 10 years, a bit longer since Steve Jobs passed away, people thought this company is over after Steve Jobs. It's never going to. You're talking about a 600% increase in market capitalization, a home run. And if you dig into Why? What we're seeing is about $50 billion coming in from services, which means that's the connective software. That's the stuff that's really moving. So again, I'm willing to be forgiven on the electric vehicles and the automotive world because that's a big, tough industry to get into. Now they're starting to say, well, look, we got so good at these services, whether it's your Apple Plus and how you connect all of your stuff with Apple Music, that we're looking at healthcare. Or we're looking at taking that model of service-based subscription models and transforming it to hardware, where you're not going to spend your $7.99 on a phone. You're going to pay a small monthly fee to have the phone. This, to me, is demonstrating really innovative business modeling and a way in which to keep the customer connected. Because if you have them on the software, you have them on the hardware, it keeps them loyal to both. And obviously, when you have them on the software service side, it's a lot, you're generating a lot, you're eking out a lot more income than you could otherwise. So when I see things that are tried or failed, or they, you look at Snap, they have the drones and the cameras and they're pulling back a little bit. These are really foreign lands. And I also think back to Elon Musk. You look at those interviews where he talks about these Tesla years and how he knows more about manufacturing than any other human alive. You wonder if Apple really has it within their DNA to produce something that's so outside of their typical market productization. I mean, even beyond computers, just the fact that we're in phones and watches is quite astounding if you look at Apple historically.
We're with Mitch Joel, tech advisor and investor, and we're talking about Apple, the company, and if it has lost a little bit of its luster. So, Mitch, a couple of things there. The thing about the cars for me is that we know for a fact that they've been trying, right?
Yeah.
So it's one thing if it's like, Apple, we've determined we're not interested. You know what? Cars will be a different thing. Doesn't matter if cars become self-driving. Everyone in those cars is going to be using our iPhone. So that's all we care about. But they've clearly been trying on that end. So that's where I go, oh, geez, maybe there's something going on internally. And then the other thing that you touched on. So let's discuss this. Augmented reality, virtual reality, the metaverse, all that kind of thing, right? Do you really feel, because they are clearly working on that. That's another thing we know they are definitely working on. Do you think that the metaverse, AR, that kind of stuff, putting a headset on your face will ultimately be successful, will have market penetration, and they'll want to be there?
They're going to have to be there, and I would make the argument that it being something you put on your face is right where we are now. It's not necessarily the final execution of it. So I look at it more philosophically, which is, do I believe that the way in which we engage with content and technology will be based off of a glass screen? No. I do believe there will be projection-like technology. If you look at cars with heads-up technology, if you think about things like televisions in your home or devices that might be able to project and do it where it's not a wearable, I think fundamentally that is true. Or you are wearing something on your wrist, but that is the projection engine of it. I do believe those are the iterations we're going through. So I strongly believe, based off of my experience in history, that we're moving away from a flat screen in which how we engage with technology. Think about Star Trek and it just being everywhere, the computer. We can access the screen anywhere, we can speak to it. So I believe in that very deeply. I just don't think that the technology is feasible to get it to a price point where it could be accessible. So when you see things like an Oculus or Metaverse and you try, you're like, this is unbelievable. Is it reasonable that we're all going to do this today? No. But by the way, this is the exact same things people said when they first saw the home PC. It wasn't that long ago that Bill Gates said, we're going to have a computer on every desk, and people thought, what for? It wasn't that long ago that people said, why would I ever need email on a portable device? Or I could never type on glass. All of these things have become not only part of who we are culturally, but the next generation. So I really do believe that instead of looking down at a screen, you'll be able to look at your world and have information layered on top of it is 100% where we're going.
Mitch, we got to leave it there. Always a fascinating conversation. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Elias. Have a great day.
Mitch Joel is a tech advisor, investor, and the author of CTRL ALT Delete.